Oshinoko is one of those shows that has so much going on that you forget what the main focus of the story is. And then one episode, totally out of the blue, they smack you in the face with it. Before you know it, an entire season's worth of emotions comes flooding back and you're hitting the feels majorly. That's what happened this week, so let's get into it. This week's episode starts where we left off last episode, which seems to be a running theme in the editing style of this season. Manga author Abiko Samejima attends the currently running play scripted by Goa, who she literally just kicked off of the project. However, now the show opens her eyes to the intricacies of playwriting and how much she would have to consider within her writing. Play director Reda then finds the balls, after Aqua's provocation last week, to have a much-needed conversation with her about the fact that no one is good at something that they just start, and that she is seriously overestimating her abilities, as although she is a successful mangaka, she has never written a play script before. Abiko reflects back on her conversation with Yoriko, where she came to the very reasonable conclusion that she fears letting go of the reins and letting someone else have a handle on her projects. I think this is very relatable for any artist or even anyone who has worked really hard on something. It's an impossible feeling when you know you should delegate some of the workload, but the project is your baby and you've put your heart and soul into it, especially when you've had an example of someone trying to do just that and having it blow up in their face, as like what happened to Yoriko. Director Reda also brings up a solid point about the fact that if Abiko puts out a mediocre script with her name on it, which is most likely what would be due to the fact that she's never written one before, then wouldn't that be just as much of a disservice as putting out the script that they currently have, even with her characters not being depicted in the way she would like? Abiko then comes to the conclusion that she does want to move forward with the production on one condition, that she is able to sit down with Goa and work on the script provisions together, which finally alleviates the miscommunications that were brought up in the past couple of episodes. Seriously, this whole thing could have been completely avoided by a Zoom call after the first revision of the script went wrong. So with just 2 short weeks until opening night, the crew finally gets to rehearsals. However, with the dynamic changes to the script, the actors are finding that the characters they are portraying have much more intense depth, which for most of them isn't a challenge, but surprisingly for Aqua, it is. We all know Aqua to be stoic and broody, and in the play he is tasked with performing the most emotional scene in the entire show. As a character, Aqua is pretty emotionally flat, and in the few times we have seen him express emotions, they have been so dramatic due to the intense circumstances that his lack of emotional fluidity in his daily life seems normal in a way. It's like we justify the extreme juxtaposition due to the harrowing emotions that still linger in our subconscious whenever he's on screen. So it isn't particularly noticeable when he isn't expressive. He's also usually wrapped up in circumstances where someone else is at their emotional peak and he is effectively a straight man, giving grounding to an otherwise chaotic situation. We've come to rely on him as a relatively stable character, but later on in this episode, all of that goes out the window as we are starkly reminded of his trauma. With direction from Kana Arima, Aqua attempts to recall his happiest memories, to learn how to act with emotion rather than relying on previous performances that he could base his presentation off of. However, it's during the recall that a bout of PTSD kicks in, which cripples Aqua's ability to be able to perform, let alone continue rehearsals. The visual of the shadow of his former self, exuding the hatred that he has for the circumstances surrounding Ai, clutch at Aqua and tell him that he isn't allowed to feel happiness, which is a stark reminder of the pre-existing plot points that have seemingly gone to the wayside until it was pertinent to bring them back. And it's during this bout of PTSD and post his collapse that Akane learns the truth of Aqua and Ruby's past. While Aqua was asleep and relapsing with memories of Ai and calling out for her, Akane overhears all of this while looking after him at Taishi Gotanda's place, Aqua's mentor from the first season, and puts 2 and 2 together. When Aqua finally wakes up, Akane pulls him into a tight hug and attempts to comfort him while lightly broaching the topic that she's fully aware of their situation and that he doesn't need to carry that burden alone. I think the saddest part of this episode was the revelation that Aqua doesn't feel as though he can speak to anyone about his PTSD because he doesn't want them to worry, especially Ruby, who is the only one who truly knows what he's going through. He has a major sense of responsibility towards her, which is overshadowing the ability to confide in her and seek comfort in communal feelings. It also makes me wonder if Ruby has the same feelings but feels similarly that she can't share them with Aqua, because she may feel he's had it worse due to being on the other side of the door during Ai's tragic end. This seems to be a major blockage in their bond as siblings, and I hope we get to see them being a devilish duo again soon. And that's where this week's episode of Oshinoko ended up. After another week of feeling like the episode lasted somewhere between the time it takes to blink an eye and a set of heartbeats, we're once again on the edge of our seats chomping at the bit for next week's episode. This time, so much more so, due to the resurgence of a cliffhanger-style ending like we've become very familiar with during the last season. Overall, though, it was an incredible episode with the return of emotions reminiscent of Season 1. And with things finally starting to head towards the proverbial fever pitch, which is the play preparations, we will continue to wait anxiously for next week's episode. Thank you all so much for watching this video, we really appreciate it. As always, if you enjoyed this style of video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, do tell us in the comments below if you've enjoyed this week's episode of Oshinoko. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.